Hey everybody, welcome back to Americanuck Radio. This is your host Mike Phillip coming at you live from God's country, Western Canada. We're strong, we're proud, we're Canadian, and we're right above you, America. You're worried about Mexico? You better keep an eye on the north. I tell you what, we've got 27-year practicing naturopath Dr. Peter Glidden in the house. That's right. Dr. Peter Glidden, how are you today?
Fantastic, Mike. So happy to be here. So happy that your show is doing phenomenally successful. You are a chip off the old block.
Well, you know what? It's because of you, man. I mean, the break to do your show was absolutely awesome. And I want to give everybody some inside baseball. This guy gave me absolutely no heads up. I had no idea what I was doing. He phoned me one day, and he's like, hey, can you do the show? And it was like an hour away, and I was like, no, but. And so I had to get a hold of a GCN, and I didn't even have a microphone. I was just doing it through a laptop. But you know what? It was cool because, it's kind of like throwing somebody in a pool that can't swim. They learn really fast. And, from the time that I went to broadcasting school, the game is completely changed. I mean, you would need 20 boards in front of you and all kinds of gizmos to do what you can do with a laptop these days. It's crazy. But anyways, Dr. Glidden, the reason why you are here is because I was watching, you did a speech at the Longevity Convention last week, and I'm telling you, you brought the house down. I mean, I had a couple of jump off the couch moments during that little speech of yours. It was awesome. I mean, it was great. And in it, you talked about, several times in our society here in North America, we have these agencies that make up stupid rules in order to tie people's hands, and there's always that guy out there that figures out a way around it. And, if we could get into a little bit about your speech and the things that you covered in it, Dr. Glidden, go.
Well, okay, so this is important, right, because the easiest place to hide something is in plain sight. And for the last 100 years, more or less, we have existed inside of a medical monopoly. We don't have a free medical market. The MDs run the show, right? The only medicine practiced in your hospital, the only medicine paid for by Health Canada, the only medicine paid for by insurance companies here in the U.S., the only medicine they do research on at universities, the only medicine they make TV shows about, the medicine of the day, is MD-directed, allopathic, reductionistic, pharmaceutical-centrist medicine. Your medical doctor may be the nicest person that God ever created, but your medical doctor does not practice medicine. Nobody does. Medicine is a big umbrella. Your medical doctor practices allopathic medicine. And allopathic medicine is awesome for surgery when it's necessary, trauma care, and a handful of infectious diseases. But for everything that people go to the doctor for most of the things that most people go to the doctor for most of the time, it is a failed methodology. And this is the reason that everybody in the flippin' world is sick, and we're getting sicker. Autism accelerating, Alzheimer's accelerating, heart disease unchanged after $25 billion a year of statin drugs, arthritis, high blood pressure, right? Life expectancy getting shorter, infertility. Everybody is sick all of the time, and it is not because we have bad genes. It's because the doctor that we go to is schooled and trained in a medical methodology which is insufficient to the cause. Now, when we look at why this is happening and why this persists, there are two overarching reasons. One is the monopoly that the medical doctors exist inside of. The medical doctors are in first place, not because their therapeutics are better, cheaper, more expensive, more affordable, or more effective. It's because they legislated themselves there, and they bullied everybody else out of the marketplace. I'm a licensed naturopathic physician, did 8 years of education at fully accredited universities in the United States and medical school in the United States, did all my boards, passed everything in flying colors, and I'm only allowed to practice medicine in 18 states. We do not have a free medical market. It does not exist. And this monopoly, the monopolization of the medical marketplace, everybody's dancing to the MD's tune, is why everybody is sick. But there's another reason why such a ridiculous situation exists, and nobody's talking about it. Well, I'm going to start talking about it because we need to understand these things, right? I'm a holist. And holistic training trains people to get to the root cause, to look at the reason why things are happening rather than just try to patch things up as you go along. So, in the imagine that. So, in the United States, right? This government was formed in the United States because everybody was sick and tired of the king. That's right. It's good to be the king because what the king says goes and the king dictates terms. The king says whatever the king wants to say whenever the king wants to say it, and everybody has to dance to that tune. Well, the people that founded this country, the fathers of the revolution, said enough is enough. We ain't going to put up with no stinking king no more. So they formed the United States Constitution. They formed the United States government in response to the dictatorship as an alternative to, the dictatorships of a monarchy. So what they did was they had a separation of powers here in the United States. They formed the government into three separate and distinct parts. The legislative branch, that's the Congress and the Senate. Those people make the laws. The executive branch, that's the president, the vice president, the members of the cabinet. They implement the laws. And the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court. And the judicial branch's job was to oversee the court system. A very nice separation of powers here, and it was a beautiful thing until 1935. Now, every time before 1935 that somebody came along and tried to get more power for the legislative, get more power for the executive, or get more power for the judicial, they were slapped down and slapped down hard. Because the very basis of our system of government here was separation of powers, people. Separation of powers. Sharks with lasers, people. That's what I need. It was separation of powers, right? It's a big flipping deal until Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected in 1935. Now, 1935, Great Depression had just ended, and it was bleak. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt wanted a New Deal, and he wanted to put people to work, and he wanted to get the government to pay for it, and he wanted to have social welfare programs, and he wanted to get the government to pay for it. And the only way that he could implement that was if he delegated power to make law, which was a big, bad no-no, big, bad voodoo daddy. You don't do that because that slaps the separation of powers right in the face. So FDR said, I want delegation of powers. The Supreme Court said no. He said, I want separation of powers. The Supreme Court said no. He said, all right, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to implement and shove through the legislative branch a law which requires all Supreme Court judges over 70 years of age to have to retire. That the cap for age, you couldn't be a Supreme Court judge if you were over 70. All of the judges at the time were over 70. So FDR said, I want to delegate power. I want to, I want to concentrate power over here in this side of the government. The Supreme Court said no. FDR said, I'll take your job away unless you say yes. The Supreme Court judges capitulated and said yes. And that was the beginning of the end for the separation of powers here in the United States. They delegated power. They formed a committee that started the New Deal, and then over 440 governmental agencies exist now in the United States. The Internal Revenue Service, the CIA, the United States Department of Education, the Food Services Department, the Federal Food and Drug Administration, the FTC. All of these organizations make their own laws, adjudicate their own laws, and not a single person who did that was elected. Right. They were all appointed.
Yeah, which is actually unlawful under the current system. I hear the music. We got to cut you off. We'll be back with Dr. Peter Glidden right after this on Americanuck Radio.
Syntec Global XFT is a breakthrough product trusted around the world for over 20 years. Syntec Global XFT will maximize engine life and fuel economy, maximize horsepower and performance, and minimize emissions. XFT packs an incredible amount of benefits into one small concentrated dose and comes with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. That's Syntec Global XFT. Put it to the test.
Head over to Americanuckradio.com now to get your extreme fuel treatment. That's Americanuckradio.com.
back to Americanuck Radio. This is your host, Mike Phillips. Super Don's there. He's just kind of sitting back and listening. He's a great guy. We've got Mr. Peter. Do I call you doctor or do I call you Mr.?
I didn't spend 6 years in evil medical school to be called Mr.
Fair enough. I'll call you doctor. So before the break, we were talking about the separation of powers in the United States, which, by the way, we don't have in Canada. We have a parliamentary system. So anytime the Queen wants, she can eat a baby. Literally. I mean, they can do anything. They can prorogue Parliament. You've got the Prime Minister as the head of a party over the country, but we have what's called the Governor General, and the Governor General is the head of the military. And that answers directly to the Crown. The Queen owns the rivers. The Queen owns the bottom of the ocean. That's kind of like Dr. Evil talking about his dad. He would make outrageous claims like he invented the question mark. It's like, hey, I own the bottom of the ocean, and I dare anybody to dispute that fact. But Dr. Glidden, let's get back into what you were talking about with the separation of powers and what put us in the situation that we're in today in the United States, and basically the same situation in Canada.
Well, yeah, so look, since 1935, all of these governmental organizations sprang up like toadstools after an August rain. And they make laws, they adjudicate their own laws, and they're appointed. They're not elected, right? Congress and the Senate are supposed to make laws, but they delegate the ability to make laws. So the Food and Drug Administration and the Federal Trade Commission are the biggest players here to keep the medical monopoly where it's going. The Food and Drug Administration in the United States does not have the back of the American consumer. The Food and Drug Administration has the back of the pharmaceutical industry. And I can't remember how many past directors of the Food and Drug Administration, after they retired, went to work for Big Pharma with gigantic paychecks. Right now, the Food and Drug Administration passed a law, and they just made this up overnight. They passed a law that said the only thing that can treat a disease is a drug. The only thing that can treat a disease is a drug. So if I discovered that buttercups cured cancer, the Food and Drug Administration would make buttercups a drug, and it would be illegal for you to go out into the field and harvest buttercups.
Or they would throw your ass in jail if you said it.
Or if you grew buttercups in your backyard, right? And that's the way that it was with marijuana for a long time. So
we'd be invading Holland.
Right. So now the Federal Trade Commission also made this magical kingdom of commerce up.
Yeah.
And once you start selling stuff, the freedom of speech, everybody talks about, oh, yeah, things might suck in the U.S., but at least we have freedom of speech. Well, the freedom of speech is guaranteed by the First Amendment of the Constitution, but once you start selling things, your freedom of speech disappears. So, if I am selling a nutritional supplement, I cannot say, even though it may be true, that this nutritional supplement has any effect, directly or indirectly, on any disease. I cannot relate the effects of a nutritional supplement or an herbal product or anything that's not a drug to the treatment of the disease if I'm involved in the selling of that supplement. Now, if I'm not selling anything, I can get up on a soapbox all day long and say, hey, everybody, earthworms cure cancer, right? But as my credibility might go to crap, but I can say whatever I want to say because of freedom of speech. But as soon as I start to sell things, I enter into the magical world of commerce. And in the magical world of commerce, you no longer have freedom of speech. So if people are actively involved with selling nutritional supplements, whether they're by Youngevity or any other company, you cannot relate the sale of that supplement directly or indirectly to the treatment or mitigation of a disease, even though it may, in point of fact, be true, even though you may have experienced it yourself. You may have been suffering with migraine headaches and epileptic seizures for 20 years, and the medical doctors have completely let you down, and then you get on board with good nutritional supplements and you change your diet and it all goes away. You cannot tell people that happened if you are encouraging people to purchase the supplements that did it for you. You can't do it. And this is how they're keeping this information in the closet. And this is a big deal. And this is why over the last 3 years, I have bent over backwards and spent tens of thousands of dollars figuring out how to stand up on the world stage, tell people the truth about the relationship between nutritional supplements and disease in order to, help eliminate, ease human suffering. Because the truth of the matter is that the majority of chronic diseases are directly related to nutrient deficiencies. You don't have high blood pressure because you have a bad gene. You have high blood pressure or blood sugar issues or insomnia or heartburn or depression or whatever the heck it is. Arthritis. You don't have it because you have a bad gene. You have it because you have a bad doctor. Your medical doctor may be the nicest person on planet Earth, but they have no training, no respect, no appreciation for medical nutrition. And your chronic disease is directly related to nutrient deficiencies, period. Now, because I have extracted myself from the revenue stream of nutritional supplements. Now, if I'm in a state, I'm a resident of Minnesota now, and when I'm in Minnesota, because naturopathic medicine is licensed in Minnesota, when I talk to a patient, I can tell the patient whatever I want to, and I can sell that patient a nutritional supplement. But when I'm talking to people around the world in other states, if I'm selling the nutritional supplement, I can't say that, even though it's the truth. So I have withdrawn myself from the revenue stream of nutritional supplements. I don't make any money at all from the longevity company. And brother, I would love to have a longevity business because I have met people who are making millions of dollars in longevity. For goodness sakes, I've met people who are even making a couple of $100 a month, a couple $1,000 a month. I mean, that beats a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. I would love to have that business, but I can't, because if I start selling nutritional supplements to the masses, my freedom of speech goes away. And I have dedicated my life for the last 3 years and moving forward, I can't see this ever changing, to educating people about the simple steps that they can take to get their bodies into the game of healing. And on my website, glidden.healthcare, I have an online subscription service. It's called the Dr. Glidden Advocate. It's an online self-help health recovery program.
Which, by the way, you can get over at Americanuckradio.com as well.
Yeah, and that's where you should go to see it, because we have an affiliate program with Americanuck Radio, folks, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you sign up for my subscription service at Americanuck Radio, then Americanuck Radio gets a piece of the pie, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's how we're going to change the world. Because
we take that money and we take over media and totally dominate it.
Yes, exactly, and we'll own our own TV shows and our own radio stations, and I think you should be the star of a sitcom, I think. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, we'll call it Tooling Around.
But in any event, right, this is the deal. So you can go to Americanuck Radio, click on the link for the Dr. Glidden Advocate program. You can check it out for $5 for 24 hours, or you can become a subscriber. 3 different levels of subscription, $17 a month, $20 a month, $34 a month. Knowledge is power, folks. On this website, I have videos that will help you to understand what you need to do if you have high blood pressure, if you have arthritis, if you've had it with conventional medicine.
It's beautiful, everybody. It's beautiful.
Check
Dr. Peter Glidden on Americanuck Radio, and we will be back. We're going to keep him around for another segment. He's going to be filling in for Professor Mike on science. Welcome back to Americanuck Radio, everybody. This is your host, Mike Phillip. And incidentally, Hillary Clinton listens to Americanuck Radio.
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
See, there's your proof. She actually was sitting in earlier. We had a really great interview with her, and she had some really, really profound things to say. Now, we have a segment on this show that we call Science with Professor Mike, but as I mentioned earlier, Mike got ran over by a tractor, fell out of an airplane, burned down, and sank into the swamp. So he's recuperating right now, and we're going to have Dr. Glidden fill in on Professor Mike's science gig.
Can you repeat the part of the stuff where you said all about the things? 21 gigawatts! What the hell is a gigawatt?
Oh, my. Science!
Oh, my. I just love the part with Sulu there. It kills me. So, Dr. Glidden, I sent you an article, or well, I brought it up to you anyways. We were going to talk about this. All these doctors are coming out and saying that this antibiotic that Hillary is taking is like going to kill her, most likely. Could you get into that?
Well, they're right. She's taking Levaquin, and Levaquin is a type of antibiotic called a fluoroquinolone. It's specifically the type of medicine is called a quinolone. And quinolones are particularly nasty. They're the most prescribed antibiotics in the world. Interestingly enough, Bayer makes fluoroquinolone, Cipro, and Avelox. They brought in $1 billion in sales last year, even though they're very dangerous compared to other antibiotics. You shouldn't be surprised at this because, remember, Bayer was one of the pharmaceutical companies that owned a death camp in Nazi Germany.
Yeah, they were brought over with Operation Paperclip after World War II.
Yeah, it was a big, bad voodoo daddy. But, it's good to be the king, right? It's good to be the medical doctor because even when you kill people in death camps, you get a pass. Fluoroquinolone, so she's taking Levaquin, right? So here are the known side effects of fluoroquinolone's Levaquin. Nervous symptoms occurred in 91% of patients taking this drug. Pain, tingling, numbness, dizziness, loss of memory, anxiety, panic, and psychosis.
Jeez.
Musculoskeletal symptoms, tendon ruptures, tendinitis, weakness in joints, swelling, ringing in the ears, altered vision, altered smell, inability to hear, shortness of breath, chest pain, palpitations, intolerance to heat or cold, acute kidney failure, brain fog, depression, and seizures, and retinal detachment, right? So,
Holy crap.
The people that don't like Hillary Clinton are telling everybody in the world that this drug is, going to make her psychotic, and that's why she shouldn't be president. But here's the deal. Whether you're for Hillary or whether you're for Trump or whether you're for whomever you're for here in the United States, why haven't the doctors raised a fuss about quinolones until now? Why haven't they raised the fuss until now?
That's a good point.
This particular drug, it kills about 1,700 people a year. 1,700 people a year die as side effects of taking this drug. Remember, MD-directed medical
they've
treatment.
taken care of that. They've taken care of that because the FDA just issued that drug a black box warning.
Yeah, that's how they do it, right? Because remember, the Food and Drug Administration doesn't have the back of the consumer. The Food and Drug Administration has the back of the pharmaceutical company. But this begs the question, right? This is just one drug. This is just one drug. In the U.S. last year, 780,000 people, more or less, were killed, dead, because they went to a medical doctor, did a medical treatment, and that treatment killed them, whether it was Levaquin or some other drug or some surgical procedure or they got a secondary infection or whatever. 780,000 people, it's the leading cause of death in the United States, for goodness sakes. Medical doctors kill more people than heart disease in the United States. And in the U.S., because we don't have socialized medicine, the leading cause of bankruptcy, medical bills, right? And why is this?
Yeah, totally.
Because the most expensive medicine is the one that doesn't work. And like I said before, and this is a perfect example, right? MD-directed medical therapeutics for chronic diseases don't work. And because they are so short-sighted, and because they are prescribed from and dreamed up and researched from this really arcane, old-fashioned, outdated, reductionistic, allopathic viewpoint, which argues that the human body must be controlled. We must control it, right? Medical doctors are not interested in curing anything. They're interested in exerting a hostile takeover on the metabolism of the body because they're trained to believe that the body can't fix itself. It can't fix itself. So it's the doctor's job to have a hostile takeover of the metabolism of the body, and damn the torpedoes, who gives a crap about the side effects? Well, doctor, one of the side effects might be death. Well, it doesn't matter, we're going to give it anyway.
Oops.
What type of a person would do that? Right? A sociopath would do that. And in my opinion, I mean, the facts, you're welcome to your own opinion, ladies and gentlemen. But you most certainly are not welcome to your own facts. The leading cause of death, and because of ridiculousness like this, like the quinolones used as antibiotics, the most prescribed antibiotics in the world, even though they are rife with side effects. And you know why medical doctors prescribe quinolones because it's easy, because it's lazy, because they're extremely broad spectrum, and, the quinolone's probably going to kill it. Well, it might kill the patient into the bargain, but that doesn't matter. That's just collateral MD damage, and that's just life. And this is why we need a change here across the world. You need to stop trusting in the intellectual superiority of your medical doctor, ladies and gentlemen. They do not know what's best for you. They only know what they have been trained in. What they've been trained in is a dangerous type of medicine when it comes to dealing with chronic illness. A much better alternative, right, is medical education. You just educate yourself about the simple steps you can do to get on the other side of chronic disease with science-based, clinically verified medical nutrition. It is 1,000 times easier than you have been led to believe.
One thing I'd like to point out, Dr. Glidden, is that one thing that the Clintons have been criticized about over and over again is taking massive amounts of cash, like we're talking gobs of cash, from lobbyists. And Hillary Clinton, for all the, if she took all that money from lobbyists from the pharmaceutical industry, it sounds like it's catching up on her. I mean, that one sure came around to bite her in the ass.
Well, right. So, but again, this is because people are genuflecting at the altar of a false god. And the only reason that people continue to see the medical doctor is because they don't have any alternatives, right? It's not a free medical market. It's a closed system. I mean, in a free medical market, people gravitate to what type of therapeutics work. I mean, if you had the choice of, your insurance paying for a medical treatment that actually cured your condition or a medical treatment that managed your condition and may kill you, which one would you go for? Well, Johnny, I'm going to go for the one that attempts to cure the problem. Thank you very much. I'll do that. Everybody in the world would do that, and that's why we don't have a free medical market. You don't think the medical doctors know this? You don't think the pharmaceutical industry knows this? These are very smart people. The only reason this nonsense persists is in order to keep big pharma rich, right? And it's a big problem. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but quite frankly, the facts argue that the pharmaceutical industry is in charge of the delivery of medicine here in the not-so-free 21st century. And look, thank God for Novocaine. It's not the drug, it's how it's used. It's not the gun, it's how it's used. But the way that the medical doctors are trained to prescribe drugs, death and destruction and heartache. And for goodness sakes, ladies and gentlemen, wake up, smell the coffee, and fire your medical doctor now.
We got 1 minute left, Dr. Glidden. So, I mean, it's just, it kills me. I mean, and people clamor for it. They beg for it. I mean, here in Canada, we've got this vaunted free healthcare system. And, I turn on the news every day watching the Canadian news service, and I mean, they pour billions and billions of dollars, almost $1 million an hour just in the province of Alberta, into this so-called free healthcare. And people are like, it's like a sacred cow. You don't talk down about the free healthcare, but it's killing them. And
I hear that. I wish it was healthcare. It's disease management, right? If it were healthcare, it would be better. And this is just the way that it is in the world, Mike. This is why your radio show is so important. Ladies and gentlemen, educate yourself. It's now or never.
Dr. Peter Glidden, everybody.